In the last episode on the DB9, you saw me strip down this broken engine to reveal really bad bearing failure. Sadly, it wasn't looking like something I could rebuild myself.
Now, I heard everything you guys said in the comments in the last video, and I've taken them on board. So over the Christmas period and the past couple of days, I've been trying to reach out online to engine rebuild companies, and I've just got nothing back. So taking matters into my own hands, getting it on a pallet, I'm just gonna drive to them and see if I can get them to quote by going into them directly.
And so off I went to the specialist, and the first guys I went to were up for the task. They took all my engine bits I had to see if we could just make a Frankenstein engine, a good engine out of two bad ones. Unfortunately though, they called me back the very next day, giving me bad news. So with this in mind, I had to have a rethink, and this was my solution.
Well, the delay has been because of this. I've been waiting for this to arrive from overseas, and you can probably guess by the size of it, it's another engine. So I've now got 3 engines. But as you can see, we've got another one here back together. And it's back together because it's actually being exchanged. This is the one that you would have seen in the last video of me stripping down and just finding horrendous bearing failure on the rods. And yeah, it was in a pretty bad way. It ends up going to the machine shop. All the cylinders needed reboring, the crankshaft needed regrinding, repolishing, etc., etc. I was basically quoted 7 grand to rebuild this engine, which I wasn't going to do considering I already paid 4.5 for it itself. And because I got this from eBay, it was on the eBay money back guarantee, so I was able to put in a return for that. So yeah, that is going back. So this engine I've actually had sourced from Poland. Some of you might be familiar with the company ECPS. They do all sorts of parts. They do carbon fiber fittings for trims and stuff. And I bought this one off them. It's only done 20,000 miles, this engine. Which makes me want to put the question to you. How much do you think I paid for this? Because I think I've got an absolute steal on this. They did a full inspection before they sent it over to me. There were just a handful of things that need doing. Just trying to remember what they were. So the rod bearings weren't awful, but they were showing signs of wear. So I've got new rod bearings that I'm going to fit. Should be able to do that without removing the crankshaft as well. There's a nice little trick that you can do. And then it's basically just gaskets for your timing cover. So should be actually okay. And yeah, with that, I got quite a bit of money off just because I had to do those bits myself. So yeah, I think we've got a real steal in this engine, and we've still had a good amount. But let me know down in the comments what you think we paid for this. Oh, but guys, I cannot explain just how happy I am to finally be talking to a camera again and being able to bring you an update. It's been so frustrating, obviously just waiting for this to arrive, basically. Been doing some work on the Mustang. As you can see, I'm just painting at the minute. I've near enough painted the whole car, just been learning how to do bodywork, and I'm much more confident with that now. But this is the stuff we enjoy, the engine work and stripping cars out and putting them back together. So yeah, really excited about this. Let's go. All right, engine is on the stand now. Now, it's still always a very nervy one because even though I've had a few engines on here, it still just feels so ropey. So just to be on the safe side anyway, because I'm gonna be spinning it over, making it very bottom heavy, I'm actually just gonna put the forklifts behind it and sit them on the end there, just so there's a bit of weight supporting it at the back as well, just to balance it up nicely. But job done. We can start, probably start with draining the oil, I imagine. So let's go, come on, thanks. Okay, well, upside down, I'm just having another look at it. And actually, I don't think I'm gonna need to take this timing cover off. I'm gonna have to anyway to replace the gaskets. I get that, but for now, should just be able to undo these bolts on the end that are holding it to the timing cover. And then, yeah, we can get the sump off and we can have a look at these rods bearings. But yeah, I just want to say like how clean this is. It looks amazing compared to all the other engines that I'm used to dealing with, like that one, which was just rusted and horrible. And yeah, this is a breath of fresh air. And genuinely, I don't think you're even going to believe me when I tell you eventually in the next episode how much this engine cost me. But yeah, again, let me know what you think is the value on that, because yeah, I think this is the steal of the century. But yeah, I'll let you know in the next episode, I promise.
With the engine out of the car, this job is a lot easier, but I have seen people replace rod bearings with the engine still in situ, which is pretty impressive. First up, I've got to get the oil sump off, and I'm pretty used to doing all this by now, being my third DB9 engine, of course. Once the sump is off, I can start cracking loose the rods and inspecting the important bit, the bearings. The bottom end is now exposed, so it's time to see how bad the damage is.
Right, so first bits of stuff I've bought to show you. As you can see, we've got all the new rod bearings here, brand new, as you can see, from Scuderia, so no issues there. These are the gaskets I'm on about, so basically mainly timing cover, I believe. I think these were. Yeah, and then this is just going on the end of the crankshaft. I can't remember off the top of my head which side, but that'll become pretty apparent soon. And then obviously we've got the assembly lube here. Now this is what goes on the inside of these bearings. So this face that we can see, we rub that in, and then it will, because this is the end that attaches to the crankshaft. The side of the bearing that touches the rod, you leave completely clean and bare, because that's meant to be snug. You're not actually meant to get liquid in there. That's what can cause like bearing wear, I think. So you're just meant to actually put lube on the side. Yeah, I'm a child. Just to put it on the side that touches the crankshaft on the bearing. So we'll do that, we'll get it all lubed up. It's still a bit oily anyway, so probably could get away almost without doing it, but yeah, we've got the lube, we're gonna use it.
In order to separate the rod bearings, I'm using my plastic trim tool just to be on the safe side, as the last thing I want to do is damage the crankshaft using anything that's metal. To replace the bearings, I'm dropping the rods and pistons down just far enough to be able to remove the old bearings and fit the new ones. There's probably a better way to do this, I'm sure there is, and I'm all ears, but this method seemed to work just fine for me on this occasion.
And voila, we now have 24 new bearings fit to the engine. Now, generally the bearings are actually okay, working my way back. These were the worst two, which I think is quite common on these engines. I think you get oil starvation happen first at the back of the engine. I've just left them out just so I can show you. I mean, they were definitely on the way out. I think we caught it just at the right time, where it's not actually damaged the crank, so that's good. But I do suspect if we'd left this much longer and this engine had done many more miles, it probably could have got pretty bad. So I think we caught it at just the right time. Yeah, quite happy with that. So just as well we did do it, and just as well they did inspect the bearings, because they were otherwise, you know, it's a running engine, you'd probably just drop it in. So that's why it's always important to check. But yeah, pretty happy with how this has gone. It's actually gone a bit more smooth than I thought. And yeah, getting there. Once that's all done, we then just have these three gaskets to fit on the front of the engine, and then just an oil seal. So yeah, we'll get all this done today. We will then, tomorrow, I should be getting the manifold gaskets for the exhaust manifold, the inlet manifold gaskets. We should be getting those from Scuderia tomorrow. They posted it for next day delivery, so that will be good. And then yeah, we'll just start actually building this engine up. We'll get it back the right way again. We will just check, we will just put a boroscope down the head, down the cylinders as well, just sort of down the spark plug holes, but just to make sure we're okay with those and that they're looking okay. Then yeah, it's just a case of starting to put accessories on, or ancillaries, whatever you want to call them. Power steering pump, alternator, bits like that. Obviously new oil filter, like I said. Already comes with the engine mounts. We've got some tubes that they've actually left on, which I think I actually took off on my engine. So yeah, all good. And we'll start getting this fitted up. Also got the flywheels put down here as well as the damper. Yeah, it's really starting to come together. And I think probably this week we'll get this engine back in its cradle, in the sort of just sitting in the subframe in the car, which I cannot wait to do, because this car has been staring at me for the past 2 months or so, just looking incredibly sorry for itself. And it's just been the same for ages. And this is obviously going to be one whole nightmare, because I did this now, what, 2 months ago? So how much of it do I really remember? Well, none. I'm a sure bet for dementia, I'm sure of it, because my memory is awful at the best of times. So yeah, that is not going to go down well. But I'm excited to get into it and try. Obviously, we have the owner's manual. That will help too, including all torque specs, etc., etc. So yeah, fingers crossed we'll be all right. Yeah, that's the goal. By the end of this week, the engine will be sitting back in there, back in its sort of engine mount seats here. The chalk tube will be connected back up to it with obviously the flywheel and the damper inside. Meaning next week, we've just got a case of actually putting the body back down and connecting it to the chassis again.
But as you can tell, I'm getting way ahead of myself there, so back to the engine for now, and it's time to replace the gaskets for the timing cover. This means removing the crankshaft pulley, which you can press off with some screws against the cover itself, and bit by bit, it'll come off. Once that's off, there's a dozen or so screws holding the timing cover on, including 4 that are connected to the 2 head covers. When all the bolts are out, you can just gently pry the cover off to reveal our timing chains. Now, all that's left is to remove the old gaskets, which I've already done, and fit the new ones. It's easy when you know how, and it sounds daft, but I feel like I know this engine layout like the back of my hand at this point. With those 3 new gaskets now fitted, I just have to reverse the process of taking apart, starting with refitting the timing cover and then the crankshaft pulley.
You're right, all sorted. Crank and the pulley back on. The bolts from underneath for the head covers are also on. So that's this front bit now done. Just got to still torque off the bits up here. Just the caps, just got to torque those off, put the baffle plate in, I think that's what it's called, baffle plate, and then the sump back on. And then that should be our bottom end done, and it's just a case now of inspecting the top end, check we're happy with that, and if we are, start putting the engine together for real.
It would be very repetitive to show me torquing off all the bolts, but assume I have, including the timing cover and oil sump. In this instance, I'm torquing off all the rod caps down to 25 Newton meters, then all down to 45 Newton meters, followed by a final quarter turn on all of them. And with the bottom end now reassembled, I quickly remove the spark plugs and take a look at the cylinders.
I've got a pretty untrained eye on this. And obviously it's got the carbon sort of soot, that's just from the combustion process. To my knowledge anyway, it's on just about every piston you look at that's done a certain number of miles. So I'm not too worried by that. I guess it's more what we don't see. If you recall in the original one, we didn't even have a whole piston. We went down into one of the cylinders and all we could see was, well, the very bottom of the cylinder, which you're not supposed to be able to see. So yeah, that looks all okay to me. I mean, the spark plugs actually look in really good condition too. I mean, pretty new. So still just need to and ah whether I'm going to replace all those. They don't look like they need it. They look actually quite new, to be honest. So yeah, we'll see on that one. But I'm pretty happy with progress today. But yeah, it is pretty exciting because this is now the furthest I've been. From tomorrow, we're going to be going into uncharted territory, and we're going to be starting to put all of this back together. And yeah, I think I'm going to have to watch some of the videos of me taking it apart just to kind of remind myself a little bit tonight. But yeah, it's already quite late. It's already getting on 8 o'clock. So I'm going to head home now, watch a couple of videos of the raw footage of me taking this apart, or the old engine, so that tomorrow we're ready to go when we get in. So yeah, good day's progress. Oh, look how cold it is. See you in the morning. All right, well, welcome back to another day. So far, woken up with a cold, but having said that, overnight I've been working on a few things, and I think I've got us some really good deals here. I'm going to start with the spark plugs now. I've been having a bit of a think about last night. This engine's at 20,000 miles. Spark plugs typically from a Google search will last around 30,000. Maybe it's something a bit more specialist like this, they should be changed a bit more frequently. So I thought, okay, let's just change them out. Assume at 20,000 miles, it's probably never been changed. So we got new spark plugs on the way, but interestingly, if you go online and you try and order it from Aston Martin, the spark plugs you have to get from Aston Martin. You can try and get other ones, but it's really not recommended. And yeah, I just wanted to get Aston Martin ones. So they only come in sets of 4, weirdly. And the ones that the ones that I didn't go for, the cheapest I've been able to find was £94 for a set of 4 plus VAT. So near on 300 quid for the set, or 280 quid for the set of 12. Now I've gone on eBay and I've managed to find brand new ones, 11 of them though, not 12, 11 of them for, I think it was £130 all in the end. Which, if you ask me, is an absolute steal. So we saved, 150 quid just on spark plugs alone there. Now, there are a couple of spark plugs in here that look new enough brand new, so they probably have been replaced quite recently. So I'm just going to keep one of those really new looking ones in, and then obviously replace the other 11. Now, the next big saving we've made is on this sort of black plastic bit up here. This is called a PCV valve. And basically it's meant to prevent the flow of oil, I believe, or when they fail, they start to let oil through. And the big telltale of when these fail is that you start to get oil build up in the inlet manifolds. And these are obviously the manifolds that come out the engine. And as you can see, they've got oil in. So it means these have failed. Now, if you actually try and get these from Aston Martin, you'll pay a bit of an Aston Martin premium. They're about £133 for one. So yeah, £260 plus VAT for 2 of these. However, if you type this in, this motorcraft was an EV152, you'll actually soon discover that it's actually a Ford part, and you can order it from America for £40 for one. So I ordered a pair of them from Amazon for £80. So instead of 260, we paid 80. So 180 quid saving there. The spark plugs as well, we saved 150 quid. So yeah, we're up, 330 quid for the day, just because we just spent a bit of time just to have a little rummage around, trying to find new ones in different places. Obviously, Aston Martin buy a lot of their parts from other vehicles, more recent ones Mercedes, older ones Ford. So it's always worth looking around just to see, firstly, is your part from Ford or Mercedes? And then once you're happy it is, then have a look around. Don't go through the Amazon websites because, yeah, you'll just pay a premium. But anyway, with all that said and done, we've got the laptop here to start playing all my raw footage, and we're just going to try and go in reverse and start building this engine back up now. Got a new oil filter, etc. The manifolds are arriving very, very soon. Also, the gaskets for the manifolds are arriving very, very soon. And yeah, we'll start piecing it back together. It's going to be a slower day just because this happened a while ago. I don't really remember it, so I'm going to have to keep referencing just to make sure I get it in the right order. But yeah, we'll just check on a big time lapse and see you in a bit.
So with the guidance of my old raw footage, I got to work, and I have to say, for anyone thinking of doing work like this, take my advice, get a cheap tripod and record yourself doing it. You don't exactly have to put it on YouTube and risk the wrath of the viewers, but just keep it for your own safekeeping. Without my footage, there's not a chance I would have been able to put this all back together so easily. Even with the footage, a lot of it is still trial and error, like here where I realised I have to connect the hose up first before attaching the tube to the sump bolts. And that's one part down and about another 1,000 to go. In hindsight, I could have taken more photos to complement the videos I had already taken, and that's definitely something I'll be doing next time. There's so many bits I don't remember, and this bracket was one of them. It had me stumped for ages trying to figure out what it was for and where it went. With most of the pulleys now on, I can move on to the thermostat housing, which is held on with around 4 bolts underneath and a further 3 on top. You'll have seen a lot of tubes and pipes still connected to a lot of the pulleys, including one to the thermostat housing. If anything didn't have to come apart, I tried to keep it as whole as possible to make life easier for me when I got to this stage. At this point, the gaskets for the exhaust manifold have arrived and they went straight into action next. Now the workshop manual does actually say to support the manifold with something as you do this, but they're not actually too heavy and I found I could hold it in position without a support. This engine is starting to look like a complete engine again, and it's beyond exciting. Last up, there's a few idler pulleys and the belt tensioner. Right, I've hit a bit of a snag. If you have a look here, this bolt I appear to be missing. And the way this is cracked, it's kind of giving me flashbacks that I might have stood on this at some point whilst it's been being stored here. But not just that, also the interior of this looks quite bad. I don't think that tape's meant to come out like that. I am just guessing here, but based on all other photos and new ones I've seen, it doesn't. So this is what I'm thinking. Because this belt also looks a bit tired, I mean, it's still grooved a bit, but it probably is the original from when my old engine came with it. So what, almost 50,000 miles. So it's actually probably coming up for a change soonish anyway. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna order a new belt and a new tensioner pulley. And I think they're general, like sort of long-term serviceable items anyway. So I think it's a good thing to be able to do. Sorry, my nose is driving me nuts, so sorry about the sniffing. But once I've got those on, I think that should help improve the value of the vehicle anyway, so hopefully not too bad. But yeah, I'm gonna get those ordered from Scuderia and hopefully they'll be here on Friday. And that was that for the day. As I seem to have caught a dose of man flu, I called it there and went home to feel sorry for myself. All right guys, new day now. It is now Friday. I'm feeling a lot better. Still a bit sniffy though, so I'm gonna keep this brief so you don't have to listen to it too much and just do time-lapse and voiceovers. But so far today, I've been busy. Created the old engine ready to go off for exchange. It's ready to go to Poland. We've got just this little nozzle here I've just put on. Notice it didn't come with it, so I've just transferred it from the old engine. This plastic clip that I said was broken, I've replaced it again from the old engine. And what I've done, next step basically, if you recall, these bits I actually had to cut the screws out. So what I've done is I've hammered the clips out here. They're no use anymore, but I've got some new clips, not from Aston Martin, just ones that will do the job. Doesn't really have to be from Aston Martin in my opinion. So they're gonna sit in a bit like this once the clips are in place. I'm still yet to actually put the clips in, but just as a demonstration. And then after that, it's gonna be the wiring harness, which I think is gonna be, well, the wiring harness and like the fuel rails, I think they are. That's gonna be the hardest bit because I've already looked at my footage and it's not very clear what I'm doing. So yeah, we'll quickly get these, I think they're heat shields on the exhaust manifolds, and then yeah, we'll get on with that harness, but it's gonna take me time to do that, I'm sure of it. Heat shield's now in place, it's time to replace the PCV valves that I suspect have failed. PCV valves now installed on the engine, it's time for the wiring harness, and you can tell I've been dreading this bit. I figured if I sat it in place and started by connecting the obvious electrical connections and plugging away at it bit by bit, it will just start to get there. I really had to concentrate here because it's easy enough to install whilst it's out the car, but it will be a nightmare if I find out down the line that I've missed a connection and it's causing some issues with the engine. There you go, little walk around, just off camera. I've just plugged this hose in, just connects down here, and I've used a new Jubilee clip because the other one was one of those sort of one-use ones. Walking around, I remember this tube connects actually into a part that I've left on the car, so I've left it taped up. You can see at the top of the by the windscreen. So that doesn't need covering. There's going to be, but that will eventually feed through here. That's why I've left it open. This will go to like the sort of the ECU sort of area. So that's fine. As you can see, you got all the plugs here. So that can stay free. Got this one, I need to figure out where that goes, but I suspect that goes down into, I'm pretty sure that went down into like the chassis leg or something like that. I seem to remember disconnecting on there. This is all plugged up. On the top, everything is now basically connected apart from like the fuel rail, injectors, etc. These obviously go in there as well. I was stuck on this for a while, but looked through my photos. So that's all good there. Moving around, managed to get the starter back in with a bit of convincing. So that's just sitting there in place now. Obviously this bracket will go around there as well, but then you got the bolts that will sort of connect the torque tube. That will then hold it all properly in place, I believe. So yeah, all looking quite good around here. Again, these cables actually go into the cab. If you remember, actually had to disconnect some from the cab, and then it feeds around into the left bit of the car, or the driver's side. Moving around, AC stays out of the way. These, I believe they go onto stuff that's on the car. And then this is the bit that was stumping me for ages. As you can see, there's natural sort of markers for these to clip into here. But then I could only see one obvious point for these to go to. There's one round here, which I do recall, but then I was missing this part, and if I just roll the clip, where I managed to find it in this crate here. They obviously didn't leave this on this for me, so the one I'm sending to them, I've just quickly taken this off. Thankfully, I've still had the engine, otherwise that would have been a bit of a nuisance. So anyway, that will be the second connection there, and then the other one there, I just need to figure out how to wire it round so it has enough space. And beyond that is just these two tubes, or sort of pipes, whatever you want to call them. I need to figure out where they go, but then we've just had these arrive from Scuderia. The idler, the tensioner pulley, and the new belts, so I'll get those fit as well. And then this car's pretty much there. We've got some, I think they're transmission lines or something that I need to run underneath. I've got those, but I'm going to do that once the engine's lifted and not on the stand. And these are the old ones. You might remember I bent them because I forgot that there was these two brackets connecting it. I've got some new ones in there, so that should be fine. But yeah, once those lines are on, it's a case, well, it'll already be off the engine stand at that point, but then we just connect up the flywheel and the damper, and then we're ready to put this back in the car. And there we have it. New tensioner is on, as well as the belt. That's another first for me. I've been told how to do it. You sort of just put, let's see if I can show you. Put one of these in the end, and you just lever it to loosen it, and then you pop it around the crank pulley, and then let it out, and it will tighten back off again. And the tightness seems good. Checked, it's in the ribs properly how it's supposed to be. So that's that job done. On to the next one. And these plugs are now done as well. Turned out you have to run it round, clip it into here, and then actually feed it through the gap above this and then it feeds around and it just about has enough cable to reach. Right, these are the new transmission lines combined with the old ones. Obviously the old ones are the ones with the kinks. So this is the new one. That runs from down under the torque tube. So we're coming forward as we go this way. And as you can see, there's just a bit of an extra. Let me get my bearings. So basically, just get this right. On the old one, I disconnected it here. So I took off this clip and disconnected it. So I'm gonna do the same on this one. So this is all excess. And then I'm gonna get some new clips ready to put on. And then, yeah, these will just feed straight into those two tubes there in the engine cradle. And then obviously these are the two tubes, fully by the torque tube. So there'll be the back of those bits. I've also figured out where this goes, down there and onto that bolt down there as well. But I'm just leaving them off for now because I've just got the harnesses taped up out the way. And then this one I can see on a video goes around the other side of the engine. So I can do that again later. But for now, yeah, I'm just gonna keep it all taped up because I've got the harnesses ready to go in. It's not gonna damage anything. So yeah, we're good to go. Let's get it up in the air. Here, I'm not taking any risks by trying to wheel the engine stand. The engine is so heavy now, so I'm just maneuvering it with my forklift to be on the safe side. I'm doing this so I can get the correct side of the engine for lifting it down into the cradle. These are now the final two bits to install, the flywheel and the damper. It's so close now. All right, we are all ready to go now. Flywheel is on, as is the damper, torqued off to spec. The damper and the flywheel can only go in a certain way, so there's no problem there. Confident that's all right. Fuel lines, I've just moved out the way with a zip tie. Just trying to make sure I've got a clear access to all these bits. Once I connect it up and it's in the torque tube, it's being bolted back up to the engine. But yeah, we're basically there now. Everything's out the way. I've taped up as much as I can because obviously that's just gonna make it a much smoother entry. And yeah, I guess I can't keep putting it off any longer. Showtime. And well, the first attempt was actually a bit anticlimactic. I soon realized that the transmission lines were stopping the engine from being able to be lowered into position properly. It kept catching where you can see the radiator. Okay, here's what I've done. I've actually just connected up the pipes now, so I can see it actually goes over here and to the left of the engine mount. So that's fine. I'll put that in place and I'll just have to figure out how I'm gonna get to that. Maybe I have to lift the whole thing up and go from underneath it. I don't know, we'll see. But for now, let's get this engine back in. It's a bit on a lean, so I'm trying to think of how to navigate that. I don't know if I can rotate it somehow, or maybe if I lift one side of this up, but this isn't light. So it's just boggling my mind a little bit. But I know one thing for sure, it's definitely gonna go in today. I ended up propping up one side of the subframe to even out the slant of the engine, and that seemed to do the trick as I was able to guide the engine mounts into their homes. Putting the engine back into the subframe took me around 20 minutes or so, and considering it's my first time and I'm on my own, I was really happy with that. Here, I'm just propping up the subframe so I can get my hand underneath the cradle to put the nuts on the engine mount bolts. Well, what a palaver that was, but the engine is back in its cradle and I'm not prepared to stop just now. I've got the forklift set up again because we're going to try and get it connected back up to the torque tube, because then next week that just means it's body on and a couple of other little tweaks I've got to do, but I feel like it'll just be a major milestone, be a nice way to finish the video, get that torque tube connected back up to our engine. So let's go, come on. This was a tricky little job actually, as the torque tube doesn't feed onto the back of the engine as easily as you think it will. I tried to push it on with a forklift, but the torque tube would just end up sliding backwards, so that wasn't going to work. Eventually though, I did figure out a solution. All right, quite a bit to update on just as I bang my head, but I'm basically using these old header bolts that were in the old engine
but also because I got a bit of a longer thread. I've been using them and my dugga to drill it sort of in and pull two pieces together, and I've just heard it clicking for real. So we're looking pretty good. We've got a little bit more to come, as you can see. We should basically get to where it's no longer sort of orangey, sort of brown, dark. It'll be just grey, where the damper meets on the spline. But yeah, now it's just a case of trying to drill this in a little bit more. And yeah, we'll be laughing. As you can see, I'm just using like long bolts for now. That's an actual bolt, so that's good. And then yeah, I've just got to work my way around and get them all in here. You see, there's even one under there, or two under there, in fact. So yeah, all fun, but I don't really care. Still excited because this is just, yeah, it almost felt like I was never going to get to this stage. So really happy. Okay, keep banging my head outside this. Right, so engine is now back in officially. Torque tube is connected, but I don't have enough of these bolts. As you can see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. There are a couple underneath. I'm missing about 3. Well, I'm missing 4, in fact. Okay, my mistake. We're missing 3, and that's because I've been using them as to mount the engine to the stand. And in between moving the first engine off and putting the second engine on, I've somehow misplaced them. So I need to get a few of these. So I will probably go to a hardware store or something like that and try and source these exact sort of ones. Failing that, I'll have to get them from Aston Martin, but obviously that's going to be a bit more expensive and just seems so needless for a few bolts, but probably will have to do that. There you go, I've just put it in now. So you can see it's a different size. That's pretty much at them as far as it'll thread. I more use that just to pull the actual torque tube in. Every time I tried to actually push this bit along here, it was just sliding this back. Just why I've got the wheel set up like that. I found the easier way was just actually get some extra long thread bolts, the same size thread, but extra long, and just pull the tube in using the bolts and sort of thread to do it. So that worked quite nicely. So by the time it gets around to the beginning of the next episode, I will have some bolts for that torque tube, and I will get those in, so no problem there. But that's basically all we got time for in this video because, well, that's as far as I'm prepared to go today. It's already getting late-ish on the Friday. I want to get home so I can start editing this for you guys and get it out to you as soon as possible. Because yeah, I'm really excited to be back, basically. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have as well. If you have, hit the thumbs up button down below. Drop a comment, let me know what you think this engine cost. I honestly think you're all going to be a bit surprised in a nice way. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Obviously, if you're new and you want to watch me do the first start of this, I'm really hoping that'll be the next episode. In fact, I'm going to try and work as hard as I can next week to make sure we get to a point of turning the key for the first time. Don't know what I'll do if it doesn't start. Probably cry off camera. You won't get the joys of that. But for now, obviously, that's it for this episode. I will see you next week. And yeah, great to be back and hope you enjoyed it. Cheers now. Bye-bye.